Can we start? So, hello to everyone. Thank you very much for your time. The people who are participating, for participants, and for the viewers who now see this translation and will see it in record. So, my name is Mykhailo Bno-Airiian. I was honored today to moderate this meeting and this discussion. We hope today will be a quite interesting discussion, and it's devoted to the question of electricity of Ukrainian export of Ukrainian electricity to Europe. You know that this year and after the war has started, Ukraine successfully joined ENTSO-E, synchronized its energy system. Now we are in synchronous mode together with all the European countries, and that's a huge historical step forward. But this was the first stage, and now we came to the situation where we are now talking and discussing about now possibility of trading of electricity. And of course, due to the situation in Ukraine's energy system, due to the deficit of electricity that we face now, due to decrease of consumption, we understand that there are huge possibilities of Ukraine's start of Ukraine's electricity export to Europe that will help both European side, European countries, and of course Ukraine. So it's both beneficial. So this day we Energy Club initiated this discussion, and we would like today with our honorable participants discuss first of all whether it's technically feasible or the export of Ukrainian electricity, to what extent it's possible, what kind of technical requirements we have, and how the trade between European countries and the Ukraine in electricity will look like in nearest months. I think there will be a lot of topics also occurred with regards to that, but of course the main idea is that what should be done, whether it's feasible, and what should be done in order we have a trade and we have export electricity. So today we have a very prominent list of participants, and a lot of people I know personally, a lot of people now are connected to our Euro integration diversity of Ukrenergo's policy. So we have here more than 10 participants, approximately 14. So as a moderator, I would like to ask you, honorable participants, to make a short speech for 5 minutes, not more. I will ask you to finish when you will exaggerate this time, and to try to understand, to tackle these questions that I raised in the beginning. Of course, taking into consideration your personal involvement and your personal experience in the positions that you held, because all of you look at this problem from different sides, and today the main idea and the main target of today's discussion is to look at this question complexly, to look from all the sides, and to talk about all the advantages, pros and cons, and all the details. So I will not, of course, name all the list of the participants, because you all see them, just to save some time. So organizers, Energy Club, asked me to give the floor first to the international, our friends, and then to switch to the Ukrainian side. So if you are not against this approach, I will give the floor first to Albina Marcus, coordinator for the Continental Europe region, ENTSO-E. Albina was very deeply involved in the in our synchronization process, and frankly speaking, was one of the key people who were technically inside the discussions and were finalizing all our synchronization that happened this year. So, Albina, whether export of electricity is feasible technically, what should be done, and how you expect the trade of electricity between the Ukraine and European countries in nearest months.
Recording in progress.
Thank you very much for your question. It's a pleasure to be here representing ENTSO-E, the European Network of Transmission System Operators. Yes, I was very much involved in all this process since the beginning, because I am now the coordinator of the Continental Europe TSOs. And when we received the letter from Ukrenergo asking for the synchronization, we put together a task force dedicated to this subject, and the task force is still working because the process is continuous. Well, to answer your question, of course, your question is it possible? Of course it is possible, and it is already began. I will use 2 slides to explain you what were the preconditions for the start of commercial exchanges and what is the timeline that is running now. So I will share my screen. I think you are seeing my screen now?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe I'll begin with...
Yeah.
Not now?
No, now we can see it. Okay.
So I will start with this one. Well, after the synchronization, Ukrenergo asked us to allow for because in the synchronization, it was an emergency situation, and our decision was to set the network transfer capacity to 0. And in April, Ukrenergo asked us to begin the commercial exchanges. So during 1 month, during May, we approved these 6 preconditions that have to be fulfilled to begin the process. And well, my idea is not to go inside each of the preconditions, but why these preconditions? Because what we want is to guarantee the dynamic stability of the global interconnected system, and at the same time, the system security. And for that, it is very important to have a very good data exchange between Ukrenergo and all the TSOs, the neighbors, and not only the neighbors, and also with TSCnet, that is the regional coordination for that part of the European system. And we have to guarantee that the Ukrenergo was integrated in a set of coordinated processes that are fundamental to go on with this process. So these preconditions were approved in an ENTSO-E meeting that was in Portugal, in Porto, in the 7th of June, and the timeline is this one. So everybody knows that in 16th of March, the synchronization was completed. Our evaluation of the stability and of the security of the system is okay. We have every week meetings with Ukrenergo to follow up this situation. So the system is working perfectly stable, and it is continually monitored. In reality, in end of March, Ukrenergo started to export some energy because I think you know, they have a radial interconnection with Poland. And so in reality, in that moment, the commercial exchanges began. But through the interconnected system, Ukrenergo asked us in 27th of April, and in 7th of June, we approved the conditions. And this is the most important situation. Last week, 1 week ago, in 27th of June, in the task force meeting, we decided that all the preconditions were met, and we gave green light to Ukrenergo to start the first auctions to begin the commercial exchanges, but we decided a step-by-step process, and the first step is only 100 megawatts. Our intention, what we approved in ENTSO-E in the meeting of Regional Continental Europe TSOs, is that this first step, it's only the first step, and we are going to review these numbers after a 4-week monitoring period. So this month, in end of July, we will have another meeting where we will have the report of what happened during these 4 weeks, and we probably will decide to increase this amount of power, and we will do it again in August, and in September we will have another meeting of all Continental Europe TSOs where we decided the following steps. Well, and this is the process. This is the process. So the good news is the commercial exchanges already began.
Okay. Albino, yes.
I will now interrupt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You are finished?
Yes, I'm finished.
But your perception or estimates in nearest several months, what kind of commercial exchange can be between Ukraine and ENTSO-E members?
What kind? You mean how much? The amount, the capacity amount. I don't have a clear figure about that. I know that before the war, when only a small part of the Ukrainian system was interconnected, what we call the Burштyn Highland, there were already commercial exchanges of a few hundred megawatts. So I assume that we can go at least to those numbers. But now the grid is not the same. We have also a line between Romania and Moldova, and we are seeing some loop flows. So in reality, to answer your question, we need to integrate the Ukrainian system in another coordinated process, that what we call capacity calculation. And that was not yet done, so I don't have a clear figure for that.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Albina, again, for your introduction speech, and of course for your help and for your involvement. So we have the European Commission on the board. We have DG Ener, representative, team leader, Mykhailo Bno-Airiian. Welcome. One question that is very interesting for me personally is that what are the estimation of European Commission? What kind of impact can have Ukraine electricity export now on the energy market of the European Union, on gas market, on electricity market, and what estimation, what perception you have regarding Ukraine's export of electricity and trade of electricity between EU and Ukraine?
Okay, thank you very much. Happy to discuss this important topic with you. So first to say, for sure, Commission is fully supporting the increase of trade with Ukraine. I mean, you've seen even President van der Leyen tweeting about this opening of 100 megawatts. Let's not forget, we already had 210 megawatts with Poland end of March. I think here it's clearly a win-win situation. As you say, our electricity market are under stress, so being able to import cheap electricity from Ukraine reduce the price, and at the same time can help or mitigate the liquidity issue that we see in the Ukrainian electricity sector. So indeed, every amount that we can increase is helping the situation. And I think that's why it's quite urgent that we go faster, of course, under the technical condition that Albino has described it. I think what is important is also to keep the current electricity market design as it is. Why? Because our view is that we want to fully integrate Ukraine and also Moldova into our electricity market. There is an important electricity market design package that we are submitting to the energy community for a decision end of this year. And this should allow to set the governance on how to fully integrate the contracting party of the energy community into our electricity market. And so, of course, that's in terms of capacity allocation and calculation. Of course, we also need to increase the infrastructure. So also looking at when we are thinking about reconstruction of Ukraine, if there is potential new electricity line that could be identified as priority project for this rebuilding Ukraine. I know that there is a list of already of project on transport. It might be also relevant to also have a list for electricity. We see Ukraine as a big potential for renewable. So indeed, we want to not only physically, but also trading-wise increase our trade. I think it's also important to note that it's not only with EU, but also with Moldova. The synchronization is not only Ukraine, it's also Moldova and Moldova Electrica. So I think when we discuss those topics, very important to always take into account the situation in Moldova and to also increase trade with Moldova, which is also in very much needed. Of course, we need to watch the situation. Summer is not the same as winter. We know that we'll have a very difficult winter ahead of us, not only for gas, because we don't know what the situation will be, and we see already the level of storage not filling up as fast as we would like, but also on electricity with a lot of outage in the nuclear power plants in France. And so I think there we need to show solidarity. I mean, it's going to be difficult and we'll be all together. So there it's even more important that we do the maximum we can to allow increase and to allow exchange and to face this situation all together. So full support from our side. Of course, we're in close contact with ENTSO-E, with the Energy Community Secretariat, with our Ukraine, and we're always there to put the pressure where it is needed to accelerate the process. Thank you. In terms of estimation of megawatt, it's, I think, too early to say, but we push, of course, for an increase of more than 100 megawatts per month. So we should try to go as fast as possible to the maximum amount. I understand there are technical condition and technical constraint, but I think if it works, we should really try to speed up. I think this line with Poland that is being refurbished would be also very important, and this project between Romania and Moldova as well, because more we have the weeks coming, more we understand the situation, and more we know where we can act. But I think we need indeed to keep the pressure and to continue the good work. And congratulations to all of you. Thank you.
Mykhailo, thank you very much for your introduction speech. I have several questions as a moderator to you. That is because it's discussed in our media and in our energy sector among the stakeholders. So have you ever calculated the impact of for decarbonization for EU energy mix with the Ukrainian electricity, even if it's traded to the maximum capacity or to any other volumes that you can calculate?
No, I don't think this calculation was made. I mean, what we are discussing now, it's 2030 targets for energy community. What is important is not how much it can bring in the short term. I think what is important is that we move and change our energy mix altogether. And so it's important that we set target politically, but also in the law on how much we want to achieve in terms of renewable. But those amounts are not done. I mean, we are working in a market. Traders are making the arbitrage between the different prices. And what we want is to indeed, when we have renewable electricity or low carbon electricity that is produced, that we can use it. So there is no congestion or blockage to use this electricity. Just to mention that, of course, in Ukraine, I mean, although of the difficult situation, we will need a lot of energy market reform in the electricity sector. And we want to relaunch this high-level working group that we had between Ukraine and the EU on synchronization. We would like to relaunch that in September, so we can identify the next step to increase not only trade, but also what kind of reform the electricity market in the Ukraine needs to be fully market coupled with EU. I think what is more and more important now with an increase of trade is the harmonization of the rules in terms of transparency, in terms of operation, but also in terms of market, because traders need to know under which rules they are acting, and we need full transparency on this. And I think we need to build trust. It's really important, and we will accompany this process from the Commission side.
Thank you, Nicola. Today we have the figures of 1,800 euros for 1,000 cubic meter of gas on the European markets. It's a huge high price that also affects the electricity prices inside the European Union. In your estimation, in your opinion, Ukraine's electricity can somehow be the factor of at least not increasing the price, but at least depressing the price inside the EU zone?
It's very difficult to say. I mean, with those kind of price, we see demand reduction. So already 80% of the gas demand is reduced just because of those prices. There is a fear among traders and in the market that the situation deteriorates. I think that's the big issue, that we see that actually in the winter months there is a full shutdown. So indeed the first impacted will be industries and everything that we can electrify, and that's in line with the Green Deal and our vision of decarbonizing our economy. Not only the energy sector is going, so we should speed up this process. Also make decision on local production of renewable, shifting from gas to electricity, but also probably, and we saw in Germany, for example, restart of coal, even if it's temporary, to face the difficult situation. So indeed, every electricity or every megawatt that can come from a nuclear power plant in Ukraine or from decarbonized plants in Ukraine is more than welcome. So that's why these first 100 megawatt are crucial. But indeed, we are expecting more, but we need to take into account the law of the physics and the constraint of the network. But that's what we need to speed up in the coming weeks and months.
Thank you, Nicola. Thank you, Nicola, for these details and for explanations. I just want to mention that for the viewers who are now watching the online stream of our discussion, you can make a question to the participants through the social networks, LinkedIn or Facebook. You can write the question, and I will say it loudly. And I will do it after our foreign participants finish, because we have several already questions. So thank you, Nicola, again. And Nicola, he mentioned a very interesting question regarding continuation of market reform, of electricity market reform. And on the 1st of June, there was a very interesting timeline. It was 5 years when our 3 years when our electricity market launched. And I think, and I remember how much time we spent in energy community drafting the law, electricity market law, and now we all live in a new environment, a new market environment. So I have a question to Arben Klokoki. He is ECRB electricity expert from Energy Community Secretariat. Arben, your perception of the level of reform of electricity market inside of Ukraine, what kind of problems you can see now, whether they are quite solid, that can have negative impact on increase of future increase of Ukraine's electricity export and commercial changes between the countries, and what progress was done in the nearest time, in last time. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the questions, and thank you for the question, and thank you very much for inviting me to this distinguished panel. Well, I think that you made the right link in terms of the market reforms, and maybe also the ability to export or import. You know, when we look at what the concept of import and export are really is about optimizing the use of resources that you have in two or more markets, and not only the resources in the market, within the market, but also the interconnection capacity. Therefore, if you don't have the right market model that delivers for this optimization of resources, then even that import and export can be what is called counterintuitive in a way, so it can really not deliver the right results. So I think from this point of view, whenever we discuss about the amount of export or import of Ukraine, and linking this to maybe also other aspects, as you mentioned before, maybe supporting the discontinuation of Europe in terms of Russian gas, supporting decarbonization of Europe. I think it should be looked at also from the point of view of merely optimized use of resources, so optimized use of interconnection capacity as well, and with this the increase of the welfare, of generation welfare in one side and consumers welfare on the other side. So from this point of view, market model in Ukraine is important. Nicholas mentioned earlier the importance that the market model is kept as it is, because of course when the war started, and it comes with a lot of uncertainty, so there was no clear, it wasn't clear on which direction the market will go, and of course there was always views that maybe it should be centralized, or maybe it should be a different model. I think from our point of view, it is important that to the extent possible the market model is kept as it is, because this will give the right index whether, or the right signal whether there should be import or export. Having the ability to import and export is then something else, but then doing operationally import and export has to do with the commercial of the market participants, commercials of the market participants, but then also the commercial of the market itself. Now, from the technical point of view, I think there is one side is the fact that this is now on the hands of technicians, so ENTSO-E working with Ukrenergo on defining what is the right level of capacity. Of course, at some point, this kind of we see this as capacity calculation on itself, because we're talking about relatively small figures, and hopefully they will increase in near future. And at some point, I think it was mentioned also by Albino, that at some point this should be left really on the hands of the TSOs that do the coordinated capacity calculation, which then links very well to the package of codes that we expect to come in the energy community. Maybe trying to pinpoint and some of the key issues in the market. I think, and of course, we don't push for an open market at each and every specific elements. We know also the issues that the European electricity market is going through, and of course, we understand the issues that Ukraine has. We understand maybe some caps that are put on the day-ahead market and balancing market, but of course it is still important to ensure that commercials prevail in these market segments, and I think it's also the other fact that I wanted to mention in how this capacity that is being made available by the TSOs is then allocated in the market. This is also an important element. And what kind of products do we have for allocation? For example, currently we have 100 megawatt that is allocated with Romania. I'm not counting the capacity that was available already on the border with Poland as part of this radial connection. We have the unilateral auctions that are in place, so capacity that is allocated by the TSOs based on these unilateral processes. Of course, this is not ideal. It was the best fallback that TSOs had to implement, but it's not ideal, and we want this process to move ahead. And we have actually a very well consolidated platforms together with Ukrenergo, together with Moderator, together with the TSOs from neighboring EU countries, where we discuss exactly these regulatory aspects on what kind of market mechanism should be used to allocate capacity. And of course, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have the practice in European markets, so we have the joint allocation process is a kind of a process what we aim for coordinated capacity allocation. And this going back maybe also to one of the questions that you mentioned, how you see the process maybe in midterm. I think in midterm we should see maybe months after, we should see at least on some border joint capacity allocation, and maybe at some point not necessarily only day-ahead products, maybe later on as there is more certainty on the market, there could be also weekly or even monthly capacity products allocated, which kind of serve as a hedge for market participants. So we're talking also about the ability of market participants to hedge their production or consumption. And maybe just another last note to mention is of great importance is that Ukrenergo Ukraine was exporting in the past. We know this bursting island already was in place. So from the market point of view, fundamentals didn't change a lot with this export ability, because there was more actually being exported in the past. But what is important to mention is the integration of the synchronization kind of created basis for further integration of Ukrenergo or Ukrainian market to other cross-border mechanisms. And here I will mention the mechanism for financial settlement of deviation, which started from 1st of June, which is maybe even one of the first cross mechanisms, financial mechanisms that Ukrenergo is integrated into the pan-European mechanisms. Later on, we hope that this will also be the same for the ITC mechanism, inter-TSO compensation mechanism for compensating transits, and so on. I think these are really the basis based on which then also other market elements would develop.
Thank you, Orban. Thank you, Orban, for these deep comments. I just want a very short question, maybe connected to Nicola. Also, some comments that there will be alliance or interconnectors, future connectors, that can be the subject of interest of investments and also support from the European side to Ukraine. I remember the times when I was a representative in energy community from Ukraine, and we were discussing these PESI projects, and there was big discussions, and of course everyone was dreaming about PCI project, but we couldn't do this. What now is changed with regards allocating the funds from the European side, and what is the role of energy community, whether it will be solid or it's somehow changed?
Okay, maybe Nicola can complement a bit on the funds. I think from our side, of course, projects that were perceived as important projects post-synchronization would remain as important projects, subject to further studies and assessments, because now we are living in slightly different circumstances with synchronization. I mean, we had to maybe change even some of the roadmaps that were even shorter term, because this all happened in a way faster than anyone expected. So from our point of view, those projects that were kind of considered as important for the synchronization and after synchronization remain as such. I think what is maybe also important to mention regarding the cross-border capacity allocation is the congestion rent. So as long as we ensure that in long term the congestion rent, so the payment by market participant that is done for capacity allocation goes to the right place for certain investments, reinforcement of grids, which is one of the regulatory requirements as well. So this is partly for which purposes the funds can serve, but of course there are also other aspects, and I'm not sure then also which projects were specifically, whether there was any commitment from EU on specific projects or not, but maybe Nicolas, if that's something.
Thank you.
Maybe just to complement. So indeed, and what changed compared to the previous situation when you work on PCI is that we have a new 10E regulation, which specifically mentioned PMI projects, so project of mutual interest, so between a EU member state and a third country. And those projects could receive a fund from the Connecting Europe facility if, of course, it has a positive cost-benefit analysis. So it brings benefits to EU and its neighbors. So I think in that context, we could indeed propose maybe old project or new one, depending on the technical flow that we see currently in the region, that could be under this label and receive support from the CEF fund. So I think it's indeed a big change, and this is something that should be taken into account, especially when we are discussing this building back better Ukraine, and if you want to increase not only the trade but also our physical connection between in the region. And of course, as Arben say, the congestion rent usually is used to reduce the tariff, but could also be used to increase a project of infrastructure for the interest of more trade and etc. So there is also possibility, depending on the level of the congestion rent, indeed to have positive market-based projects.
Thank you, Nicola. Thank you, Nicola. I think it's a very perspective, and it will be discussed. But the war, at least the war, should anyway stop for going deep investments in the infrastructure. So we have a very interesting speaker who definitely should cover the question of trading and traders and the prices and the effect of Ukrainian electricity on the European market. Jan Heisman, member of the board, European Federation of Energy Traders. Jan, just before introducing your speech, just can you somehow answer to the question, what will be the effect of, or already is the effect of Ukrainian electricity on the prices on the European market, and how you estimate how it will what the market behave when the increase of our commercial change will be not 100 megawatt, but for example, thousands megawatts?
Well, 1,000 megawatt, going from 100 to 1,000 is obviously a big step. We understand that there needs to be more export capacity enabled. But I understand also that, on the other hand, there may be technical issues that limit that capacity cross-border. Thank you for inviting me to this call. We had, within EPET, started before the war to work on some documentation for cross-border trading. This work has been paused due to the conflict in Ukraine. And today, obviously, companies that are engaging in trading are sort of scared a little bit of this market. It is probably fair to say this due to the operational difficulties to deal with a country where there is martial law in force. The war also brings about a heightened risk of non-delivery, of disruptions of all sorts. So this is probably why, let's say, the trading so far has been reluctantly developing, but nevertheless, it's a good sign that there is now this possibility to start trading that becomes wider. We also think there should be more export capacity. Maybe we could go to 650 megawatt instead of the 100 we have now. But what we certainly observe is that there's not enough cross-border capacity. So we'll need to find some sort of monthly allocation mechanism to enable more power to actually to be exported. We've also received some messages that on the Ukrainian side, there is still a need to pay transmission and dispatch tariffs. This could maybe go in order to further incentivize this trading. And the same goes also for just Forex regulation, meaning access to currencies. For example, if you just need to buy back some capacities in case of non-deliveries, inability to compensate losses that are not because of non-delivery of power. So these are issues that relating to Forex that could be, I think, fixed on Ukrainian side. Also to allow companies to go into margin calls. Equally, that is currently not possible because of Forex regulation. And I believe there is also some other issues that are non-energy issues. They're just issues that also impact cross-border flows. For example, VAT. Also that, why would EET apply for buybacks, for example, that are required, that needs to be looked at. So we're having here, let's say, a cocktail of measures that could be taken up in order to further incentivize the trading of electricity within Ukraine and outside Ukraine, certainly. This is what we are here looking at. Inside Ukraine, a couple of remarks, maybe that before the war, there were some issues there inside Ukraine, lack of liquidity there, and maybe just not enough incentives for notably the nuclear generators in Ukraine to go into the market. A price setting was done basically on the result of as a result of the coal plants run by DTEC in Ukraine. So this was the price setter before the war, and maybe the guaranteed buyer system that has been established in Ukraine was not as effective as it was planned to be. So there is maybe also an idea when now Ukraine is approaching Europe even more than in the past to have a look at what could be done to better incentivize the market in Ukraine itself rather than just looking at the exports. These exports obviously are welcome and they are giving a piece of normality back into this business. So we are certainly as EFED being supportive of let's say developing this further with the other stakeholders. So it's additional liquidity that comes into the market, and we certainly would be interested in helping this to grow. And this is all what I had taken down on my list. I don't know whether that was of any value, but I hope that this cross-border activity that recently started will grow and we'll get some more back of the normality we had before the war in that context. Thank you.
Jan, thank you very much for your comments and for introduction speech. I just want to check again with you. You are more optimistic about trading with Ukraine of electricity, or more pessimistic about trading electricity with Ukraine?
Personally, I'm always optimistic. But this, what obviously in trading, you need to look at how to manage your operational issues, whether it is possible for you as a trader to assume the operational risks that result from that trading. And currently there are a couple of risks that result from martial law or the more geopolitics and more in general that make that trading more risky than trading with any other country. So that is just a fact where none of us can really change. But I think what we can change is, for example, looking whether we can increase cross-border capacity, for example, and create a monthly product so that we allocate, let's say, 70% of the cross-border capacity on monthly auctions. So this is something we could do, or that we are creating some sort of more regulatory transparency on these auctions. Armin said there's no need to reinvent the wheel. But I think also transparency, if we succeed in creating a transparent environment when it comes to participation in these auctions, I think this will be a success. And so far, optimism is probably the right conclusion.
Thank you. Thank you. Optimism is always better than pessimism, but you should be informed optimist. So Fatih Kolmek now is next, is Senior Electricity Manager in USAID Energy Security Project. Fatih, we've known each other for a long time. You were actively involved in everything that was done in the reforms in our synchronization system. And of course, you also gave a support shoulder to the engaging Turkish experience for Ukraine. Fatih, you already many years dealing with the Ukraine's energy system and the Ukraine's electricity markets. So in your point of view, do we have huge obstacles on the way of paving this trade between Ukraine and EU countries for electricity?
Yeah, thanks, Mykhailo. Indeed, we know each other for a very long time, and thanks for having me in this distinguished panel. But I would like to take on from where Jan left. I'm also very positive and very optimistic, and personally, I do believe that this is an informed optimism, and specifically for the following reason. Well, all of us know that what has been done in the electricity market with the reform, market opening development, and the ENTSO-E integration, even though it was an emergency synchronization, this was a huge solidarity that the European counterparts provided to Ukraine. So this is something invaluable, but it has a reason. The reason was that Ukraine has done its homework very well in terms of opening the markets, in terms of doing the homework for ENTSO-E integration, I mean, catalog of measures. And even actually, as we speak during this martial time and the war period, the countermeasures that have been given by ENTSO-E that Albina mentioned are being implemented as we speak. And even today we had a meeting with the PG experts, which actually blessed the, let's say, new tuning sets that are being provided or which are going to be implemented in the power plants. So definitely we are going to be seeing, as previous speakers mentioned, increasing capacities of export. And personally, I'm very optimistic because we were actually planning that the synchronization will take place later on this year, and then the joint allocation will start maybe next year in 2023. But I can say that like Ukraine is now already 1 year ahead of its schedule. So, and the entire electricity market. So that's why I'm very, let's say, optimistic about the next steps. And also with ESP, we strive together with the stakeholders to implement what is needed to kind of raise the bar further. And in terms of significant obstacles, I do believe that the current developments are very promising, but as the previous speakers mentioned, there are a couple of things that needs to be carefully addressed. For example, yes, indeed, the exports are happening, but starting the joint cross-border capacity allocations is a step that will allow a better utilization of the synchronization opportunities. And similarly, Jan also mentioned, and Nicholas as well, that the trading needs standardization. Indeed, when we look at the wholesale market, yes, the day-ahead market or the balancing market, intraday, these are all standardized part, but most of the trading takes place in the forward segment, including the bilateral. And especially for the cross-border trade, we need to see the stage that the trading, product, settlement terms, and the risk mitigation measures are fully standardized with the trading practice in Europe, so that Ukraine can fully optimize or fully utilize the benefit from synchronization. And I think then there are two other dimensions that needs to complement this effort, which is following the start of joint cross-border capacity allocations, then the market coupling process for day-ahead and intraday should be the next. And definitely the market monitoring, surveillance activities with regards to the implementation of REMIT are very important. Well, for example, very soon we are going to be issuing our second wholesale market assessment report for NERC, and it's going to be shared with the ministry. I'm not sure to which extent we are going to be able to share the content due to the martial law with the public. But in general, we know that the market has been historically suffering from high concentration. And indeed, we kind of see that the churn rate, the liquidity is not high. And market power can become an issue from time to time. And these are all kind of impediments that could impede the process for full integration with Europe. And we know that, for example, there was a law in the parliament, the REMIT law, which was drafted and ready even before the war. So these processes need to be kind of restarted so that there's this strong momentum with the synchronization of synchronization with ENTSO-E, and the new candidate status for EU could be really turned into something very practical and really raises the bar further after the ENTSO-E synchronization.
Thank you, Fatih. Thank you for the comments and for the speech. If you can allow me, we'll go on because the time is very short. We already 1 hour, and I think we have 40 minutes left. So I just got the message from Andrei Nemirovsky, he's a member of the board of Ukrenergo. He asked because he should leave for the meeting in one of the key stakeholders in the energy sector. So he asked me to give him a floor, if you allow, just to finish this hour with the foreign guests. Just Andrei, can you comment, please, in general, what you have heard today, especially with regards the auctions? And I know that you devoted so many years for building this system. First of all, are you more optimistic or less optimistic with the electricity export, and what Ukrenergo will do in the nearest months in order to increase the electricity trading changes between Ukraine and the European countries?
Thank you, Michael. As for me, an optimistic or pessimistic, I believe more optimistic than there is nobody here. Maybe Albino, together with us, spent the last 4 months as being quite optimistic. Actually, this step, when the commercial exchanges actually started, from one perspective, it was revoked, but actually it started from the clean sheet, because the oil producers in Ukraine are now having possibility to provide the export activities from Ukraine. And of course, 100 megawatts, it's something that we should start, because any long way is starting from the first step. And this is the first step, and this is only how I believe all of us should think about this 100 megawatts. One of the important, from my point of view, let's say, achievements of this expert, of this synchronization, of this transformation, which is nobody actually says, but it is important, that in previous times, something like 97% of electricity which was exported from Bushtin Island was created on one thermal power plant, and the commercial schedules of the export was more than 90% also one company. Now the share of this company is something like 25% in very small 100 megawatt corridor. It means that competition works. This is what about market. This is what most important that we are talking about. The fair competition, the fair market. And this as a basis will be the basis for all any other structures. What we should be in line with is to save this achievement that there's no any regulatory basis on any way somehow will vanish this achievement. As for the auctions, from one hand, yes, I'm doing this for the long time, but on the bad things that there is no common auction, it means that my work is badly. But from another hand, everybody knows a bit Arben, Lena, Fatih, everybody who is involved in this process, they know that Ukrenergo for all these years, for the last 5-6 years, we intended to provide common auction as soon as possible. And we created a lot of the basis for this. Actually, we created the company for create. One of the targets was to create the software for faster making happen the common auction. So we are even doing not traditional ways to speed up this process, but still we are looking forward for this. As for future steps and my personal forecast, I won't say any dates with the capacities because it will be based on the observation of a lot of the engineers, how our first 100 megawatts have influenced to European grid. And basis on these results, there will be the decision how the situation will be developed. I know that the market participants are very wanted that some capacity started allocated for some long-term auctions. For example, starting for the monthly, we will work on it on the next or maybe one of the next task force to decide it. It will also be one of the next decisions. Please be a little bit patient. We are working on it. It's on the table. And because these daily auctions is one of the conditions that the exports start as it is. It was very important that to not create some disturbances in case that physics will say, no, guys, you must stop it immediately. So to underline, I believe that Ukrainian energy will find this, and it's wanted in European market, and it will find its place there, also substituting the natural gas, which is some still using for producing electricity in Europe. Of course, it won't substitute all of them, but as one of the factors. And as I said, all the long road started from the first step. Ukrainian electricity will substitute Russian gas on European market. Thank you.
Thank you, Andriy. Just one question, if it's possible. I think it's possible. Just to say, from starting these several days when there is trading electricity now, commercial exchanges, how much Ukrenergo get from allocation capacity auctioning, and whether these figures are different from the figures that you used to get in the previous time when Bushtin Island was in place and with allocation with other countries.
Yes.
Can you name the figures?
It's different. It's different.
And the competition, whether there is a big impact on the competition.
I will say yes. It's quite different digits. I don't believe I can just say them, but the competition in place. We have a very important thing, as was a decision of the RGC and the task force. Before the task force give us the green light, we did communicate the date after which the export will start. So the market participants, unfortunately, didn't get the chance to be prepared somehow to reinvent, because it was any day can be something goes wrong, and to say a lie, it is worst case than say nothing. But only in first minute when we can announce the situation that the export is started, we have now something like 12 or 13 active players on these daily auctions. It's very good from perspective that it's just started. It's not weak yet, but we already have 13 companies. There are producers, there are traders, and it's quite transparent. It's any company can get, any Ukrainian, of course, on Ukrainian auction or the Ukrainian market participant can take place, but it is on the transparent way it is allocated. We have more than 200 companies registered on auction. More than 200 companies registered. It doesn't mean that all of them are working on a daily basis, but still it is quite high competition on this market that we achieved.
Thank you, Andriy. Thank you, Andriy. We go on. So we have Mark Lane. It's a principal economist, European Bank of Reconstruction and Development. Mark, one general question from my side is that they already mentioned the question, the matter of investments in the electricity sector, and according to the different estimation of the experts in Ukraine and outside, that the opening the markets and trading between Ukraine and EU of electricity in big volumes, of course, will open the energy market itself for investments, and there will be real investments in the infrastructure, in the generation, in the renewables, in different segments. In your possibility, how you see it, whether you calculated, of course, if before the war and now the opportunities that the trading of electricity opens for the possible investors, and what should be done for that, for investment go on into the sector.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for kind of inviting us to this session. I kind of finding it extremely interesting. I suppose kind of on the investment side, obviously there would have been kind of investment beforehand, say significant investment, and it would have been kind of increasing as well. I think the clear thing, obviously, kind of with the war now, is that in terms of kind of reconstruction, and not just kind of for recovery, but reconstruction as well afterwards, you'll have significant investment that will be required. Some of that will, I suppose, going to be on the need for new kind of interconnectors as well. But I would also kind of add here, and I think it's been raised already, it's not just the actual infrastructure in terms of building new interconnections, it's also maximizing the use of existing interconnectors and any new kind of interconnectors that are built as well. I think an issue in the past is you build a new line, but then how much of that capacity is actually utilized. So I think it's a case of maximizing the capacity on existing and any new interconnectors that we would kind of invest in. I think another kind of, I suppose, kind of major issue will be in terms of kind of de-risking kind of, I suppose, kind of investment risk kind of going forward as well. Basically, kind of when we are looking at, say, kind of the levels of investment required, I think kind of even kind of, I think in the recovery kind of plan that kind of just come out, it was kind of looking at about 130 billion kind of for the energy kind of sector kind of going forward up to 32. I would say that a lot of that as well kind of will be maybe kind of provided from grants, kind of EU grants, so kind of also kind of from IFIs in terms of kind of investment funding. A lot of it will also need to be provided by private sector investment. And I think this is creating the right climate. I think, as we mentioned earlier, it's creating the right conditions, not just from the technical side, but also in terms of the market side, to allow as much kind of, I suppose, cross-border trading as possible, and to have a kind of transparent, and this is where kind of all the regulations that are in place, whether it's remit or transparency regulations. It's also, I suppose, in terms of the actual network codes for long-term transmission rights, or kind of if you're looking at market coupling as well, kind of further down the line with day-ahead intraday, it's making sure that you have the right conditions in place for investors, I suppose, kind of to actually be able to come in to reduce the level of risk that would be in place. A key part of that as well will not just be the market design and market structure going forward. It'll also be, I suppose, kind of the actual level of, I suppose, sector reform that's in place, not just for the electricity market, but also the SOEs that exist kind of in Ukraine as well. And looking, I suppose, kind of at increasing maybe kind of corporatization of, say, kind of the key SOE kind of, but also looking at possible future privatizations for non-critical kind of SOEs as well. So I think a lot of the I suppose, kind of investor climate, given the amount of investment that we will need, it's a case of how do we minimize the actual risks to those investments that are kind of coming in. Even before the crisis, we would have had, say, kind of issues in terms of, I suppose, kind of basically kind of changing some of the rules around renewables and in investments that would have had issues in terms of incentivizing investment for renewables going forward. I think it's clear that kind of as we go forward, we need to try to make sure that those risks are as possible kind of kept to a minimum kind of going forward where we can. There'll be some kind of external factors, obviously, kind of that we've no control over. But I think kind of within kind of Ukraine, I think it's a case of if you can try to minimize, say, kind of the issues that are there around kind of corporate governance with SOEs and in terms of kind of SOE kind of reform, I think that would be kind of critical going forward as well for future investments, particularly from private sector. And I would also kind of welcome kind of, I fully kind of agree with kind of the idea of increasing, say, synchronization. EBRD is delighted to hear that obviously kind of we're starting kind of the initial, I suppose, kind of synchronization in terms of commercial trading and look forward to being kind of increased over time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I have one question with regards to what you were saying. If you look at the EBRD portfolio and activities for last, I think, 10 or 15 years, EBRD is one of the key supporter, financial supporter of state companies and state infrastructure, electricity infrastructure. So you're one of the key partner of Ukrenergo, of Energoatom, of Ukrhydro. So you have so many loans given that gave the opportunity to increase the stability of the system. But in your estimation, in your feeling, whether our synchronization and our integration to EU market will change the role and the place of EBRD inside the Ukraine? Will you increase in portfolio the private companies who will invest in trading, who will invest in generation, in other facilities that are connected to our integration?
Yeah, no, I think kind of synchronization will basically kind of only help in terms of kind of investments kind of going forward and looking to increase the level of investment. I suppose kind of the role of EBRD has been important over the last, say, kind of decade or so, or 15 years, in terms of trying to kind of create the right conditions. There's a lot of us supporting, say, the state-owned kind of companies like Ukrenergo that we have here, and it will continue to be so kind of going forward. We'll continue, I think at the moment, we're still kind of working very closely with Ukrenergo. We've kind of a number of projects in terms of repurposing kind of, I suppose, kind of existing projects that we have, even in terms of providing additional kind of working capital and liquidity support during the crisis. But it'll also be looking at kind of providing kind of investments, particularly in terms of grid investments going forward as well, that are needed, I suppose, kind of for the market. And I think kind of that as you have the level of kind of cross-border trade kind of increasing, the level of interconnectors that might be needed then as well, increasing the amount of renewables. Like, again, when we're looking at increasing the cross-border trading, that will create kind of huge opportunities within Ukraine for being able to kind of export, but also kind of, I suppose, increasing the amount of renewables and other kind of generation that's there kind of within Ukraine. That will obviously require investment as well. So I think kind of, at least we're looking going forward, I would say that kind of with the increase in cross-border trading, that will it'll only increase the amount of investment that will be needed. And I think kind of obviously kind of EBRD will look forward to playing a role in supporting that as well, not just in the private sector, but very much so kind of with the state-owned entities in terms of improving the grid infrastructure.
Thank you for sincere answers. It was Mark Lane from EBRD. So I will switch the floor to Branimir Belyan, Regional Relationship Manager, Power Markets, Dansk Commodities. Branimir, the floor is yours, if you can hear me. Yeah. So in your opinion, so my traditional question, are you more optimistic or less optimistic with regards to our electricity change between Ukraine and EU countries? We don't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yes, okay. Yes, we are definitely more optimistic. We were actually very positively surprised with the first commercial flows that have happened last month on the border. We think it's the development is very fast, and we were actually very much positively surprised. In general, as a traders community, we welcome this development a lot. We see that the things are happening very fast. There is a political will on the both sides, of course, in Ukraine and also on the ENTSO-E and the Europe to make this happen very fast. As you all know, the prices now in Europe are on all-time high level. Today, the price in Hungary was around 350 euros. In Ukraine is capped around 75 euros. So we all know that how much of incentive it creates for the traders to be active on the border. Of course, Ukrainian prices are kept. In case there was a no cap, we don't know how much the price would be. In Europe, we typically don't have the price caps. And I think this is also an important issue to think, because we don't want to end up that Ukrainians are actually subsidizing Europeans with a very cheap energy. This is something that can also happen. Of course, the biggest issue now is, as everybody else before me was talking about, is the ATCs on the border. Current level are very small, and it is a question how much and how fast this can be ramped up. Of course, here are many technical issues. It's not just the commercial and the financial. Having in mind that Ukrainian installed capacity is in around 40-50 giga, having the ATCs on the border below 1, it is really small, and it is very hard to make a real market with such a small capacity. So I think the biggest work will have to be done here. Of course, there is a lot of work to be done as well on the transparency, on the harmonization of the rules. We are looking forward to D-1 capacity allocation. As we know today, are on D-2. We would also like to see that there is one auction, not two, on each side of the border. And such things, of course, make the market more efficient and make it easier for us to trade. Other than that, I think Europe is really looking forward to Ukrainian energy, especially having in mind that Ukraine has an energy mix of both thermal, but also a lot of nukes and hydro potential, which also makes it a great add-on on Europe, because in Europe we have more and more renewables, and having such a stable inflow of energy, it will be a great thing for Europe. Also, as the previous speakers have mentioned regarding the renewable projects, of course, to finance renewable projects, you need to have your offtake plan, and being connected to Europe will make this much easier. It will also be possible in future, of course, not just for the marketing of the energy, but also for the long-term hedging.
Thank you very much. One question to you. Today it was already mentioned in our discussion about the winter time, that winter will be very difficult, could be very difficult, and hopefully it will not, but it could be very difficult both in Ukraine and in the European Union with regards a shortage of gas supplies and the deficit of gas and shortage of electricity generation. So in your opinion, the flows, and Albina, it's also connected to you, to whether it's possible to switch from export to import electricity, and what will be, how you estimate, Branimir, on winter, what will be with electricity interflows between Ukraine and EU?
Well, it is very hard to give estimation for the future, but due to this unfortunate war, which has, of course, an impact to also consumption in Ukraine, and having in mind that unfortunately there is a lot of also refugees from Ukraine, which means that consumption will definitely be affected for a little bit longer period than we would all like. I think in some let's say mid-term that Ukraine would be exporter to Europe, and also what is a benefit at the moment for the Ukraine is that there is no carbon tax in Ukraine at the moment. So all this will create an incentive for Ukraine to export, and of course on the other side would help Ukraine a lot to get access to the currency, because at the moment, as you know, with these high prices, we are talking about the very, very valuable exports.
Thank you. It's quite interesting. So I would like to switch floor to the next speaker. It's Katerina Danilkova, acting director at separated subdivision Energoatom Trading of Ukraine's nuclear company Energoatom. Katerina, it's nice to see you.
Nice to see you
in this
too.
different position, because we used to work together and in one company, and Katerina was very active on her direction. So Katerina, in your I cannot resist in asking about Energoatom and the plans. How you estimate what will be with the exports volumes? How you estimate what will be happening in future in nearest months, and your expectation, your estimates regarding winter time?
First of all, thank you for the opportunity to join today's discussion on the prospects of electricity export from Ukraine to European countries. Maybe it's not too easy provide some prognosis or some estimation. I just would like to say about possibility, because it's really maybe infinity, that's to say. Our company Energoatom is the largest producer of electricity in Ukraine, provided about 55% of electricity in the total energy mix. During the autumn-winter period, our share reached 70%. Since the beginning of the full-scale war in Ukraine, the raw power demand dropped by 40% because of the forced shutdown of the large number of industrial enterprise, and it has become impossible to sell all available volume of electricity in the inner market. Today, the company has sufficient reserve of capacity, about 2,500 megawatts available for sale of significant amount of electricity on the European energy markets. However, the current transmission capacity to European countries is limited to 100 megawatts, which is extremely low considering the export potential of Energoatom. Energoatom planning to be an active participant of electricity export to European country, as the electricity sold in the European market is a source of income for the country. In addition, export of electricity will contribute to maintain the affordable electricity tariff for population in Ukraine under the public service obligation mechanism. Energoatom is the main contributor to the mechanism and public service obligation and maintain this mechanism, providing over 60% of production for the needs of householder and helping to keep the tariff low. The funds from export will help the post-war and reconstruction of damaged and lost infrastructure. First of all, I say about Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The long-term power export agreements for 5, maybe even 10 years will enable attracting cheap and long-term loans for construction of new nuclear power unit in Ukraine. I would like to highlight that June 2022, Energoatom has started export of electricity to the Republic of Moldova. The planet's sales are estimated to make more than 75,000 megawatt hours. Ukrenergo is currently carrying out work to ensure the possibility of connecting the overhead transmission line Khmelnytska NPP Reshov at 420 kV voltage scale. As part of modernization of this line, Energoatom is ready to promptly perform necessary retrofitting work at Khmelnytska nuclear power plant to make a commercial export technical feasible. We hope that NEC Ukrenergo and Polish side will also perform necessary work on their side. So, to summarize, our company will do everything possible to expand the commercial export of nuclear power to Europe, which will facilitate not only loading our own capacity and receiving foreign exchange earns, but also ensure stable performance of European energy sector in the context of cutting off supplies of Russia energy sources.
Katerina,
Yes?
in this for these last several days, in this 100 megawatts of export that is now happening from Ukraine to Europe, what is the volume that you sold, Energoatom sold?
Oh, unfortunately, not so much. Time to time, it depends on. Sometimes it was about something about 25 megawatt per hour. For our company, is too small part of possibility.
Why it's happening?
Because of just 100 was closed for us, but we ready to provide any sum of money. Plus this, we face to some problem. Our most part of our partner invited from us a stable contract. I say about futures, of course, and forward, and they invite providing period not less than 1 year. Even 1 month not allow to planning financial activity of our counterparty, etc. That's why daily auction not the perfect model of communication and building our business with our counterparties.
This is, by the way, is very interesting question. I don't know whether Jan is still here. I cannot see him because it's very interesting whether in the future the company itself will be participating as your company is, or the traders will dominate. I mean, so there will be the change of the roles on the market. What you estimate? So Energoatom will participate on its own always, or you assume that there can be change of kind of roles on this market? So
at the moment we looking for our counterparty themselves, but it depends on such model of auction. I say about daily auction. Assume just dealing with trader like our counterparty, but it will be a much longer auction for longer period. Even if it will be just 1 month, such scheme will allow us to deal with consumer and supplier directly without any traders.
Thank you for this frank answer. So we are going on. We have Bogdan Sukhetsky. He's not here. Volodymyr Shvydky, yeah, he's here as I see. CEO of energy provider ETG.ua. Volodymyr, can you comment on everything you heard today? What kind of perspective you see on this market and of trading and and with regards export or import? Volodymyr?
Доброго дня, колеги. Якщо зручніше українською, так буде ефективніше на зараз. Короткий коментар.
Якщо можна, я маю запитати у організаторів, тому що я знаю, що робоча мова англійська.
Okay, no, we try to speak in English. For our company now, this doesn't have any experience for export in last 3-5 days, but we have a lot of information from the market about the price of capacity, and we see that today maybe it's some first case when participants in market try to find the big and the best case solution for commercial prices. But like for me today, it's too high price for capacity, and maybe in tenders for capacity for 1 month or 1 quarter, it will be more practice and more interesting for commercial price for traders. This is just opinion for first 5 days working models, but I have more information, and I would like to have more information about export from electricity from solar station, because like everyone on this meeting and in the market know about situation with the payment for green electricity from renewable sources, and if it's possible to take some understanding from operator NPC Ukrenergo or from other participant, how it's possible to get the capacity market for futures for 1 month or for 1 quarter, and when the renewable sources producer can be the sale for the export green energy. And in this case, a question for colleagues from European Union operator and the association who participate in this meeting about certificate of the green energy, how it's possible to get and which company in Ukraine can possible to give the certificate for this electricity. Thank you.
Thank you, Volodymyr, for your comments about first days and the questions to Ukrenergo. I regret to say, I think that Andrei is not with us. He unfortunately should have gone to the meeting, as I understand. But I have a question to you, Andrei Nemirovsky. He didn't disclose the figures, the numbers, how much Ukrenergo get from allocation capacity for these first days. But can you, for example, disclose the price? You say the price is very high for this allocation auction allocation capacity. If you take this the price of the electricity on the market, on the European market, or of export price, and the price of allocation capacity, what is the figures?
the last day of 5 and 6 of 4th and the 5th of July, the price was close from 200 euro per megawatt to 300 euro and more. This is like for me the prices in the same resource in for megawatt in Romania, but
if the price is
pushing
the price, somebody is paying this.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yeah.
But why the prices are so high?
Because the competition is
because
high.
it's competition for the first days and who have a more cash flow for this for these cases, maybe we'll play next time.
But anyway, this is real. This is Olena, you're absolutely right. This is the competition, and that's anyway. This money stays in the country and goes to the hopefully will go to the infrastructure increase of infrastructure for Ukrenergo of the lines. Yes, I saw these prices and I was very surprised. But anyway, it means that our company is trying to struggle for export opportunities, at least at this day. What your estimations? What will be in the winter?
Question for me?
Yes, for you.
Which price? Yes. Which price should be in the winter, or which?
No. What will be the situation in winter with the trading, export or import?
I think so. Export, of course, and that should be going for everyone sources for generation production company in Ukraine, and for green, for alternative and traditional sources should be get to export electricity, because like for me, my information from my pool of and portfolio of clients, it's more today 3,000 of consumers. We lost last quarter close 30% of consumers.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Volodymyr, for this interesting
Thank you.
Frame of conversation. Olena, you one of the last speakers, and it's very good that you're in the end, so you can sum up what we today talked. Just one question in the beginning that Volodymyr told about this competition, about the role of the competition. You used to work in energy regulator. So how you estimate what is happening now on the market? This is the first question for me, and the second question is that when it will happen, or whether it will happen when the renewable producers in Ukraine will export electricity outside of the country.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much to Energy Club for invitation. I'm very pleased to be here today with honorable colleagues and speakers. My comments will flash back a bit to what has already been mentioned. Mykhailo, my evaluation is that current situation under the unfortunate conditions, horrible unfortunate conditions of war, Ukraine is making pace in markets integration at a much faster track than it was supposed to be doing in an evolutionary manner. And the test for us right now is not only this specific situation, but how we perform and what basis we as a partner will create for future extension. Of course, given the technical parameters that ENTSO-E will be coordinating for the Ukrainian side. Yes, market reform is one of the key bases, and the market functioning is one of the key bases for this future extension. The question too about exporting, and of course, with all the optimism that we are seeing right now with the current events, we still have to remember that it is a huge act of solidarity from the European side towards a relationship with Ukraine. And it's only on us and on our efforts. It depends on how quickly we will progress in full-scale exports. The issue of exporting Ukrainian clean electricity to EU is very interesting. As we well know, both with you from your historical career, Ukraine has never had a very clear spelled out energy strategy, unlike our energy neighboring countries. And the question of absence of this energy strategy, short, mid, and long term, is of course very heavily undermined by the military situation in the country right now. So what we had on the system historically is the development of the renewable generations, but we never had a plan and the source of investment for new balancing capacity. We only had short-term evaluation coming from the adequacy report with the TSO, but no bridge from that short-term adequacy to the high levels goals of Ukraine to be exporter of renewable electricity to EU. So we had this gap before the war, and we still have it now. So one of the cornerstones, from my viewpoint, for Ukraine to provide transparency and predictability to our European partners is to work on this short-term strategy, of course, including all of the unpredictable factors that will add to it and will complicate it. How much and of what kind of generations we will have available, how much of the demand we will have inside of the country. Of course, the impact of war on the market has been significant, minus 30% of non-consumed capacity, but this seems to have stabilized. Right now, it is a piece of stability. However, of course, the dynamics will depend on our military strengths. To clearly answer this question, Ukrainian institutions have to do their job. And it is unfortunately right now that for me, as a person who has been dealing with market regulation for years, right now we have to do like a triple job, you know, on top of normal circumstances. We have to do our homework that we haven't done over the peaceful time. And colleagues have mentioned many points of that scale. That comes from, I don't know, joint capacity allocation to implementation of remit transparency regulation, to basically bringing our market rules in line with European things and practices, and also to launching things like inter-transmission compensation mechanism, which is a direct pricing impact to incentivize trading. We also should not remain naive that the difference in prices right now lies from mostly the administratively kept price caps in the market. And we need to create conditions for our European colleagues to be full-scale partners and also be prepared to import electricity. We should remember that we are still in this horrible war, and the consequences and the developments might even end up in Ukraine being in need to import electricity at certain parts of the season, certain parts of the day, depending on our security of supply situation. And then we have to also remember that the key indicator of market coupling is price convergence if we look at the European markets. So how sustainable it is for us to continue to support this big price difference, it is the issue. Do we have to create conditions for European traders to be interested in importing into Ukraine? Yes, of course, we have to do that. We also have to implement the new regulations that are part of the acquis by the end of 2022, and that includes very complicated regulations like CACM, and that is a big part of work. On top of that, of course, to operationally manage the energy sector in Ukraine right now, ministry issues many decisions, and each of these decisions, from my viewpoint, should be benchmarked against whether and how it impacts transparency and predictability from the viewpoint of our European colleagues. We are talking today a lot about the price dynamics in the market. Yes, the prices, it's public information, they're ranging from 50 to 300 euro per megawatt, and they reflect the clear rule that the cross-border price, the price of cross-border capacity, 100% matches the price difference in between the neighboring markets. But this is prior to the introduction of the public service obligation that is under discussion of the government. So we shall see whether and how that will be introduced and how that model of the public service obligation will impact the competition or the monetary resources that would be received by Ukrainian TSO. And one last but not least comments, from my viewpoint, the key factor for predictability and transparency on Ukrainian side is strong and sustainable institutions. We know that Ukrainian government is right now looking at a serious reform of the government organizations in Ukraine, but key players who are responsible for integration of our market into European ministry, the regulator, they have to continue function in a transparent manner and be the guarantors of Ukraine's future process in making our rules compliant.
Thank you very much, because we are short of time. One question to Lena: the price caps, they should be on the market in your point of view, or it should be taken away from Ukraine market?
The price caps, as you know very well, is the mechanism that Ukraine basically uses to control prices. And price caps that are in the market right now is the major source of the price difference that Ukraine is now enjoying. So we have to balance between the short-term goals of price stability, recovery of cost of local generators, and the true market value of electricity. There is this one thing that makes me very confident is that historical position of Ukraine, where cheap is good, no longer works. Security of supply has a cost attached to it, and we will have sooner or later to face this cost to be sustainable.
Thank you. Thank you for this frank position. We have the last speaker, Lisa Van Villet. You very interesting. You are presenting, as I understand, Ukrainian Energy Exchange, and you are a business developer here. So, what do you agree with Volodymyr with his estimation of these first several days of trading, and what do you expect, what do you evaluate from our interchange of electricity between Ukraine and EU?
Yeah, thank you, Mykhailo. And yeah, thanks to all the participants today. Also, I'm very honored to be part of this distinguished panel. And yeah, it was great to see there's such a big interest, both from the Ukrainian side and from the EU participants, both the Commission, ENTSO-E, and all the other stakeholders involved in this process. And I think this really shows not only the potential, but also the interest and also the joint efforts that are currently undertaken by all the stakeholders involved to make this possible in such a difficult time for Ukraine. And we've discussed some of the auctions already at the capacity side. And today I would like to speak more about the actual trade of electricity. So we, as the Ukrainian Energy Exchange, have already opened the possibility of exporting electricity through exchange auctions. So this is already for us to be prepared for all the stakeholders that would like to indeed use this transparent way of trading to buy and sell electricity cross-border from Ukraine to the EU. And here the 100 megawatt at the Romanian border are a good example. And also, here should also be mentioned that we have already the capacity available at the Moldovan border. So there's also real interest and real possibilities for this transparent way of trading. For all those who are interested, you can go on the UEX website, on our website. You can find already all the necessary documents, how it works, how to get admission to the system, which is completely ready already for the first auction. But we are, of course, still waiting for the system to be used. Here I should mention that we should recall that the law on electricity market of Ukraine provided at some point the obligation to sell through the auctions. And why was this done? It was done, of course, to reduce the risk of corruptive measures and to make sure that the resource was traded free, transparently through the auction platform. Here I should say that at the previous meeting, because I attended an earlier Energy Club meeting, and I also gave a short or a bit longer presentation about how this would potentially look from our side. And back then I said that the the Ukrainian legislation was not entirely clear about whether this mechanism for auctions should be used when we are talking about exporting electricity, because we know that for internal Ukrainian domestic trading, the medium to long-term auctions that we provide are mandatory. But we interpreted the situation in such a way that indeed this should also be used for exporting electricity. And it's therefore also a UEX position that it should be this transparent tool that we provide to trade electricity, to get to the best supply and demand, best price formation, and to have transparent trading. But in the end, it's of course the decision up to each trading participant. How do you want to work? And here I would just show briefly a presentation to refresh everyone's mind about how this would look in from our side. So in short, the mechanism is almost identical to the one that has been working already on the UEX website for a long time for the commercial section, for commercial trade of electricity, but now it takes place in foreign currency, in euros. Here we would assume in this, in the mechanism that we've built, we would assume that only buyers from European Union countries would buy at the auctions, and sellers from Ukraine, so the residents as we call them, would sell the electricity. And here you can see then also in a schematic way how this would look like. So indeed, it would be the trade of good, the auctions that we provide, and then the purchase of capacity separately. But as it was already stressed by many of the participants today, this is really a process up for improvement, maybe some joint allocation, maybe similar allocation schedules. And this should also, from our side, be something we could improve also for the trading schedules. Because as far as we are now, we have basically the system in which the participants can themselves put up the auctions, can themselves decide when they would like to put something up for auction. For example, Ukrainian sellers can put up positions for the sale of electricity, and the non-resident buyers can put positions to buy this electricity, and vice versa. The advantage of this approach is a competitive way for Ukraine producers to have free access to the selling of their electricity, and these prices will then be formed by free market mechanisms. Then I will switch to the second slide and dive a bit into how this would then look from our side, just to give you a brief example. So how would this look on the technical side? Well, first of all, participants would of course need to get accredited to our special application or our special section. And you can see this as the website, it's quite an easy process. Then trades are held every working day at the request of the party that wants to initiate the trade. So it could either be, as I said, a buyer of electricity from the EU or a seller of the electricity from Ukraine. And here you can select any of the borders that you would like to trade on. So the system is in principle ready for trade in multiple borders and not only at the borders at which it's currently possible. Here you can see also how one trading session would look like. They can be carried out several times a day, doesn't matter, and a limited number of sellers and buyers can put up positions for sale or purchase in one auction, and a number of participants in these positions are also unlimited. You can then bid on the items that are in the auction. You can see also here a position example, how this would look. You can see the different specificities that are there. You can see what kind of electricity you would like to trade. You can see the borders, as I explained, what are the conditions. You can upload a contract, which is currently not entirely harmonized and not entirely standardized, but this is something we are also working towards. And as you can see today, I think we are looking really here at the process in which the interest, political interest, is there, and we should all together move towards fixing all the issues as they come on a rolling basis in order to at least start with the process until, for now, as it creates such large benefits. And then finally, you can here also written on the slides that there is no collateral needed at this point. We are still looking how this should be done, because we're due to martial law, as Jan Heitzman also mentioned, there are some restrictions on foreign capital. Yeah, exactly. And here we should really still look into how this would look. Just to quickly finish, so here's an example of how the orders would look with different load schedules, so either profile or a block order. To give you an example here, it's a little bit more basic than we have in a commercial section, where we also have, for example, peak and off-peak. Here it can all be uploaded according to the schedule that the buyer would like to have it. So this is all already in place. And then finally, I will show you briefly how the auctions work. Quite basic, but here's how it looks. So the auctions are held for both increasing and decreasing prices. The system that we use, PP bets, fixes the fact of concluding an agreement with the bidder for the position whose offer was the leader at the time, or the most, the best offer at the end of the waiting time for the best offer. It's possible to submit counter offers. The system generates all trading documents and auction certificates. We are as transparent as possible in the market, signed with an electronic signature. And here I see that we still have 10 minutes. So I also don't want to take up too much of your time to conclude and maybe ask some questions. So just from the UEX side, we can say that we are ready. And we are very open to work with the stakeholders to further improve this process, to contribute to the process, as it's such a big, opportunity for Ukraine. And thanks again for inviting us and for all participants to join today.
Thank you very much, Lucy. When I used to work as deputy CEO of Ukrenergo in 2017, when we just started our synchronization process, when we signed the agreement on future connection, and we started to build this bridge between Ukrenergo and European TSOs. And when we were visiting these countries, they all opened this very similar, trading systems and showed how the market is working. And then I was thinking, oh my God, when it will happen in our country. And now it's very great to see that it's already there. And I think it's a huge step forward of our country in general to be the part of Ukrainian market, of European energy market. Thank you again. We have several questions from our viewers. Of course, some questions were already covered by the speakers, but there are still some of them that can be interesting. So if there is Katerina, you are here, and Olena, you are here. Just the question, I think it's could be addressed to you. Ukraine lost about 10 gigawatt of capacity as a result of Russian aggression. How will this affect export opportunities during this and next year heating and during the 2022-2023 heating seasons? Is the question from YouTube from Volodymyr Melchenko, who is Director of Energy and Infrastructure Programs of Rosenkopf Center. I think, Olena, you know the market very well, and maybe Katerina will also comment as the Energazrum representative.
Ukraine, of course, has proportionately lost both generation side and the demand side. And again, reconciliation of all of the numbers will have to be looked based on the forecasted electricity balance that will be developed by the TSO and submitted for approval by the ministry. And it is a prerogative of the ministry to basically put together an operational balance and an operational document, which is called the electricity balance, to see how Ukraine will do in the upcoming winter season. And of course, the key question here, whether will be at what price and how Ukrainian generating capacities will be provided with the fuel, and and at what price. And then we are yet again going back to the market, whether the market is in position to absorb the true cost of fuel, or Ukraine will be looking at another mechanism of finding the money somewhere to close the gap. Of course, if we look at the demand on the system, and we are talking, if I'm not mistaken, about some pickup in demand from spring to summer in the range of 7 to 8 billion kilowatt hours a month, that basically driven not, of course, by the industrial demand, but basically driven by post-war return of population and some pickup in medium and small businesses, and compare that to our export cross-border capacity to EU, which is currently less than 2,000 megawatt. It's actually 750. It still looks on the surface that the system is in surplus capacity. But again, the developments will depend. The true situation will depend on first gas situation, fuel situation and the situation a specific node of the energy system. For example, we know that Centrenergo is responsible for the Kyiv Oblast generation node. Whether and how they will be positioned sustainably to procure fuel, it is an issue. From where and what price. So I wouldn't like to be giving forecasts without seeing specific numbers, but on the high level, we are still in the overcapacity situation, and we obviously can afford, following the compliance with technical criteria, the total amount of export that is available with the cross-border connections between Ukraine and the EU.
Thank you very much, Elena, for this professional answer. Katerina, you are there, or we go on? Okay, she will join us. So we have a question from Nicola Nerik from YouTube. Can we expect soon that other borders could be open for trading, not just Romania? Maybe it's a question for Lise or for Brahimir, for Volodymyr.
Maybe it's a question to TSO, I think.
And yeah, I know, but yeah, they are not here, unfortunately. And Albino, maybe you can also comment on that.
Maybe I can comment. As far as I know, the auctions with Slovakia will begin in the following days. And I also know from Ukrenergo that they are already thinking of organizing common auctions with Hungary. So that's what I know, only short term. Yeah.
Thank you very much. There is very interesting question. It's not provocative, but it's kind of different wording. Michael Grossman, managing partner at Tumbleweed Partners, asking him, I'm curious, I'm quoting him, I'm curious to know to what extent this increase in electricity exports from Ukraine is due to synchronization and to what extent is due to collapse of industrial demand. Could you disentangle the two effects? Albina, can you comment on that, or anyone else who wants?
Mr. Marcus.
It will be the last question. The last question.
It's for me, the question.
Beg your pardon?
The question is for me.
Yeah, I think you can answer this.
But,
yes.
but please, I did not understand you totally. Please, can you repeat?
Yeah, I'm quoting Michael Grossman. He's managing partner at Tumbleweed Partners. He asking, I'm quoting, I'm curious to know to what extent this increase in electricity exports from Ukraine is due to synchronization, and to what extent it is due to a collapse in industrial demand. Could you disentangle the two effects? I think this could be a question to you and to Elena.
Well, I think it's both. Ukraine now has, of course, enough capacity because the consumption reduced a lot. And of course, without the synchronization, it was not possible to be in this situation.
Thank you, Elena.
And of course, as it was mentioned by previous speakers, the synchronization was a project of Ukraine with ENTSO-E by itself, with or without the war. The timeline, the roadmap has had a long way of preparation, and the scheduled date was, Mr. Marcus, please correct me if I'm wrong, 2023, I think was the deadline.
Yes, it's correct. And the first connection agreement we signed with Ukrenergo was in 2017.
Exactly. And one more important aspect that is indirectly raised in this question is the direct connection between this military and energy security. I would like to remind the honorable audience that the military attack on Ukraine was on the first day of the isolated mode of operation, the set of technical tests for Ukraine to prepare for further integration with EU. And basically, again, there is a direct connection here. Then what happens with the war? With the war, we are seeing a huge decrease in the demand, and we're also seeing a goodwill from Ukrainian EU partners to sustain Ukrainian economy and to sustain Ukrainian energy sector. And when the amount of harm was evaluated both at the level of the Energy Community Secretariat and the European Commission, the ways of minimizing financial support was, of course, looking into the direction of commercializing electricity exports, which were happening de facto, but within the framework of technical limitations set by ENTSO-E, because Ukraine, of course, didn't go through the full technical compliance process that it was supposed to go through. So please, here is a direct link. Would this whole process happen without the work? Yes, it would. Would it happen later? Yes. Is there a connection between financial support and commercialization of exports? Yes, there is.
Yes, perfect. I totally agree with you. Of course, that's one of the reasons why we are doing this step by step, because the synchronization was done in emergency conditions without all the technical details and agreements and process integration that we forecast in February. 1 month before the beginning of the war, we decided the roadmap, and we reviewed it totally, and that's why now we have to go step by step. One of the explanations is that we are doing this without all the dumping measures for stability that we have agreed with Ukrenergo, and without all the communication processes and data exchange processes and capacity calculation processes. That's what the explanation of doing this step by step.
Thank you to all of you. I just will summarize because we are short of time. What is the main outcome of today's discussion, I think I can summarize, is that there is the clear feeling that Ukraine is already the part of European electricity and energy market. That is 100% true, and that will not change anymore. I was very pleased to hear today the messages from European Commission saying that we need more electricity, we need more power, and I will repeat our big communication thesis that we were used to communicate 3-4 years. Frankly speaking, it's not important in general whether it's export or import. It's trading, and really trading that was told today, it gives a huge liquidity, additional liquidity to Ukrainian internal market. It's what we were fighting when we were drafting the electricity new law of a new electricity market, is that the consumer should get a right to choose on the market. And in today's situation on the energy markets with the stakeholders, of course, this window give this right to choose to the consumer, and that's the great outcome of synchronization, of our integration, and so on and so forth. And of course, in today's realities, in the gas situation, in the energy situation on the European market, of course, this cooperation is beneficial for both sides, and that also goes with the mood of synchronization and of the idea that we should be the part of Ukrainian energy system. I think this synchronization will change a lot, and of course, export will increase. I'm personally we're pretty sure about that, about technician sides. We need, of course, to improve some technical things, to go this step-by-step process, and to go on with market reforms inside and good regulation that Elena mentioned. But anyway, we're on the right track. Of course, peace should be on the land, but anyway, the prospects are high, and we just need to stick to all this just to realize all this potential. Thank you very much for all the participants. I'm very glad to see you, who I know personally, who I didn't know. It was very interesting to get acquainted with you. And see you next time on different activities inside the country and outside also. And good luck.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye,
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.